Welcome back to Boston Center, the chat. George Balekji, Lucy Burdge. Let's get right to it. We got our guy Jay King with The Athletic helping us break down everything the Celtics are doing so far this offseason. So let's bring him in. Jay King of The Athletic. He's been covering the team so well and this offseason so far. Jay, good morning, my man. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Last year's offseason was a lot easier to cover, though.
I mean, last year's offseason, as it went down, was the ramp up for the championship. So now, or the go back to ascend and try to go back to back. Now we see what the Celtics are doing. Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, now with other teams. We knew this offseason would be all business. But from a basketball perspective, how do you view the Celtics right now for the upcoming season?
I think they just have a fluid situation. I think right now, obviously, they're a little more than $15 million over the luxury tax threshold still. So they're under the second apron, which is a good spot to be in. They've made two big trades to cut salary, but I think I don't know if they're done moving. And I think this is just going to be kind of Brad Stevens reconfiguring things. I don't want to call it a gap year because they still have a lot of, proud championship level players, but sort of take a step back to kind of reset so that they'll be ready to go when Jason Tatum comes back.
Yeah, rebuilding year, I think, is what we might be going with here for the Celtics, because it's not tanking. It's not all is lost. And one thing they have gained, Anthony Simons. How do you see him fitting in with this Celtics team?
You know what? It's going to be, first of all, he shoots a ton of threes. He's a dynamic, gifted scorer. The problems show up on the defensive end of the ball. I think he could be a strange fit next to Peyton Pritchard. I think it's still possible that the Celtics shop Anthony Simons and look to shed even more salary. Like I said, they're a little more than $15 million over the luxury tax threshold right now. If they get under that, they can and stay there for 2 years in a row. They can reset the repeater tax. I know people probably don't want to talk about money too much, but that's going to be the big driving force for the Celtics this summer. That's why Brad Stevens has made the two big moves that he's made. And I think there could be more to come because they are close enough to the luxury tax threshold that they could get there without it being too painful.
Yeah, man, I thought tax season ended in April, but as we get into this NBA offseason, we're going to keep hearing first, second apron, tax violations, all that. But with all these moves going down and with them getting under that second apron, I thought, okay, great job by Brad Stevens. But yet, Jay, we're still hearing Jaylen Brown's name be floated as a possible guy that could be traded. How likely do you think that is, and why would that be a possibility for the Celtics? Why not keep the Jays together for when Tatum is back?
The reason to do it would be because you've been blown away by an offer. And teams, obviously, they kind of smell blood in the water after the Tatum injury and with the Celtics needing to shed salary. So they're calling about those guys. I know that the Celtics price for Jaylen Brown would be sky high. I don't know if there's anybody out there willing to meet that price. And, so far they traded two starters, but they were able to get under the second apron without moving Jaylen Brown, without moving Derek White, without trading Sam Hauser, who was also a trade candidate. And so the trades, obviously they've had a bit of a talent drain the last couple of days, but I think they were smart moves by Brad Stevens to pick up a couple of draft picks and pick up nothing but expiring contracts, get off the final couple years of Drew Holiday's contract, which could look pretty bad by the end of it, and kind of reposition yourselves to just have a little bit more flexibility in the future.
When you say sky high, I love you point that out. Like, we saw Desmond Bane go for 5 first-round picks, and we've seen other players get traded for some talent. What in your mind is sky high for the price of a Jaylen Brown?
I think it would take young talent. It would take a prime draft asset, at least a prime draft asset, probably several first-round picks. It would be a huge haul. Obviously, Jaylen has done a lot for Boston. He's won a championship in Boston. He fits really well next to Jason Tatum. Those guys have grown together and won together and have proven throughout the years that they're a winning duo. And so, yeah, it would be very high.
I hope that we do get to see Jaylen Brown as his own big man this season, and maybe that doesn't happen. So hopefully we'll see. But how does Brad Stevens do it? Because it seems like everything works out for him, and he makes these moves that are like something that you wouldn't expect. What is the secret sauce to what Brad Stevens does?
I think he's just a very smart guy, a very thorough guy. So far, he's done his work early, and I think it was important to move early while you still had more options, while the cap space was still out there to kind of dump salary on the Brooklyn Nets in the case of the Kristaps Porzingis trade. He found that Portland Trailblazers, who weren't really an expected suitor for Drew Holiday, but apparently want him to mentor Scoot Henderson and help them take a step toward respectability as a team, and picked up nothing but expiring contracts in the deal. So he's done well, but at the same time, you lose Drew Holiday, who was a key piece of your championship team. You lose Kristaps Porzingis, who had the rough playoff run, but was, other than that, super productive during his 2 years in Boston when he was healthy. And obviously that was a question. That's part of the reason why his value was so low. But these are painful trades, and they're smart trades, I think, to shed the money that the Celtics have done and do it without picking up any future money. But these are tough trades to make and tough decisions for Brad to make, and he might have some more to come.
Yeah, it's tough to see it happen, especially everything they've done for the city. But also when we still look at this team, like, we know there will be no Jason Tatum to start the upcoming season. We'll see whenever his return can be. But that's still, say they stick with the Simons. That's a guy that's 20 points per game, tremendous shooter, fits in a Joe Mazzulla offense. When we look at the East, Jay, Tyrese Halliburton now with his ruptured Achilles. We don't know what's going to happen in Milwaukee with Giannis past this offseason. The Knicks have a new head coach. The Cavs are the Cavs, and the Magic are the Magic. What is your outlook for this Celtics team? Because even with these moves going and these departures by guys that were core figures for them winning rings, this is still a team, in my eyes, I wouldn't be shocked if they're a 2 or a 3 seed come postseason. I would be more shocked if they miss the playoffs than if they're a high seed because of A, how weak the East is, but B, also because this is still a Celtics team with a lot of talent.
Yeah, I think they could be pretty good. We'll see what they do with the front court, though. Right now, everybody that played in their front court is either a free agent or gone in the case of Kristaps Porzingis. So they have a lot of work to do there. I still think they could make salary cuts here to try to get under the luxury tax. So what you see now, it might not be what you get. Right now, they're about $4.5 million under the second apron. Is that enough room to keep Luke Cornett, to keep Al Horford? Probably not. So either you shed more money and try to keep those guys. You're watching those guys leave. If you lose those guys, you've lost 4 key contributors to your team from the last couple of years. Jason Tatum, he could return at the end of next year, but the history of Achilles injuries suggests he probably won't be great. So I don't have super high expectations for this team, but I think that'll be part of the fun. Seeing Jaylen Brown figure it out as a top option, seeing Peyton Pritchard with more responsibilities. How big a year could he have after winning Sixth Man of the Year last year and showing that he had more to his game than a lot of people realize. So I think they have a chance to be very competitive, and they have a lot of proud guys. I'm interested to see how Joe Mazzulla handles having a team that doesn't really have championship expectations.
It will be fun, I think. I'm looking forward to it. But do you think that Niang will end up playing a game for the Celtics? And is Brad Stevens done, or is Niang going to be a piece that he continues to move and Brad Stevens makes more moves going forward?
Yeah, that's another one. Like, he makes about $8 million. It's an expiring contract. You could definitely move it. But also, I think Niang would fit pretty well in Boston. He's a very good role player, a connective piece. He's obviously from Massachusetts and a local guy, and seems like a good locker room guy, someone who's all about winning, all about the team. So I think he could fit well if they keep him. But again, there are a lot of moving pieces here. They still could look to trim money. And I'm not sure I'm very sure that what you see now is not what you're going to get at the end of the day. I just don't know what changes are coming next.
With the one thing we know, that there will be no Jason Tatum come time when this season tips off. Out of all that, let's say there is a structure of it is the Jays and Derek White, they stick. Brad Stevens, I think one of the best parts he's done is shed Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis contracts and not give up White, Brown, or any draft assets. So let's see the top 3 guys are still here, Jay. What do you see as what the Celtics do need to add this offseason? To your point, the front court's very thin now. And there are some spots and some roles, like a defensive stopper and Drew Holiday now gone. Who is a player you would like to see them add through a trade or possibly in the draft, which we'll talk about in just a moment?
I'm a big Ryan Kalkbrenner fan. I think that he's just a solid big man, and toward the end of the first round could be his range. He could be available when the Celtics pick at 28. I think he would help in the front court. He shoots threes. He blocks shots. He's a very gifted pick and roll player. Just knows how to handle himself in those situations. So I know there's been some speculation about him and the Celtics, and that name kind of makes sense to me.
Hey, Ryan Kalkbrenner, I mean, just over 7 foot would be that next big coming into the Celtics, helping out defensively, great lob threat, and as you point out, shooting the threes that someone Joe Mazzulla would love. Overall, with the draft coming up, and I love you mentioned Kalkbrenner, the senior out of Creighton, that's someone that, when watching, and me watching the Big East, being an alum of Seton Hall, love watching that conference, I always see guys that go, okay, he looks NBA ready. Do you think that's the path that makes sense for the Celtics, or could it be a more developmental type draft pick, maybe age 18, 19, but has a lot of upside?
I think it all depends on who's available. We haven't seen Brad Stevens make too many draft picks. Baylor Shireman last year was a first round pick Brad Stevens has ever kept. Previously they were going out using those first round picks to get Malcolm Brogdon, to get Derek White, to get other players into Boston. And so I honestly don't know too much about how Brad will be as a drafter. Last year, it was Baylor Shireman, who was in college for 5 years, who was a more established guy, an older guy, and he had a slow start to his rookie season, but kind of came along later in his rookie year. So yeah, I don't really know too much about Brad's track record there as a drafter. I think they'll go best player available though.
Best player available if they stick and pick at the end of the draft at 28 would make sense. Maybe a guy like Rasheer Fleming, older guard, big wingspan, can shoot the three and defend well. Could we also see something this season, too, with all the talk of the guys we've seen at the NBA level? Would you be surprised to see J.D. Davidson take on a big NBA role? Maybe Jordan Walsh finally emerge as a guy that plays significant minutes for the Celtics as they go through this complete remake on the fly this offseason?
I think J.D. Davidson's going to have a hard time because, number one, even after trading Drew Holiday, you still have Derek White, Anthony Simons, and Peyton Pritchard above him in the backcourt. And number two, they're obviously in the quest to save some money, and he has a non-guaranteed contract right now. So I don't know what they'll do with him, but I think that could be tough. With Jordan Walsh and Baylor Shireman, those guys could have a much bigger opportunity. Obviously, Jason Tatum goes down. You have about 37 minutes per game available. And those guys, they showed flashes in spots, weren't really consistent last season. They're going to need to be consistent. They're going to need to be better. They're going to need to contribute on a regular basis because not having Jason Tatum out there, he did so many things for the Celtics, and now, those guys will get their chance.
Heading into the draft and in the wake of these most recent moves, a lot of people are saying that Brad Stevens is the best GM ever and he's a wizard and all of these great things about what he has done. Do you think Brad Stevens is a better GM than NBA head coach? Is this his calling, is being a GM after all of the things that he has done as a head coach, but a GM is what he was meant to be?
That's a good question. I think he was meant to be a coach. He was such a good coach. And obviously they never won a title, but he took a team with rookies everywhere and young guys everywhere to Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals against LeBron James. He meshed several different variations of rosters. They won, I believe it was 25 games in his first year, kind of had a hodgepodge roster of random guys his second year, made the playoffs every time after that. He was just a phenomenal coach. Obviously, he's great at building a team too, and I think his time at Butler showed that, and he's kind of carried that along into his time with the Celtics as the president of basketball operations. He knows what he wants. He wants no-nonsense guys who are all about the team, and that's how he's gone about building it. But I think the thing that's impressed me is how quickly he's learned all of the collective bargaining agreement stuff, all of the salary stuff that maybe a lot of coaches don't really concern themselves with. But when you're in charge of the basketball operations, you really need to know all that stuff. And the Celtics have been really sharp on all of the fringes there during Brad Stevens' time in charge.
Yeah, I love that where you end with, because we saw what Brad Stevens did to build a team that won the 18th banner, and rightfully so gets all his flowers as a GM. We just saw what Sam Presti did to build that team, and the Thunder team that looks like they won't go anywhere, and got the first NBA title in franchise history. But to your end point, that's what jumps out to me the most about Brad Stevens, where he knew how to exist in the Big Three era, the Supermax era, build a team, flip picks, and win a ring. And now he seems to seamlessly navigate how to get in with this new CBA, with the second apron, with what is as hard of a cap as we've seen in the NBA. Where does Brad Stevens get this from to flawlessly go from one type of way to lead an NBA front office to now seamlessly transition into the next type of way and be a guy like a Sam Presti that is just ahead of the game, is what it feels like, Jay?
Well, I think part of it is he leans on the guys in that front office who have been there for a long time. Austin Ainge just left for the Utah Jazz, but he was someone super trustworthy. Mike Zarin, Dave Lewin, those guys are really sharp, and I'm sure helped Brad navigate all the CBA stuff that he had to learn. He has said that he spent a lot of time on the trade machine when he first got the job, just kind of figuring out, different possibilities. And obviously from, reacquiring Al Horford to going out and getting Derek White to finding Kristaps Porzingis and Drew Holiday as the missing pieces to the title squad. And also he's hired, two great coaches. In first, Ime Udoka, obviously that didn't end well, but then Joe Mazzulla to replace him. Joe Mazzulla was not even a bench assistant the year before. And for Stevens to give him that opportunity and realize that Joe could flourish as a head coach, I think is another just brilliant move by Brad.
Well, I got to ask about that laugh. Do you bond with Brad over the trade machine? Like, you guys sit down, go on some fan spo, and put some stuff together?
He's much better at it than I am. When I try to make possibilities, I'm like, I never would have thought of the Portland Trailblazers for Drew Holiday. I'll tell you that much. So, yeah, Brad's a little better at the trade machine than I am.
All right, I want to end it with this. You mentioned Joe Mazzulla and his eye for head coaches. It was Ime Udoka, then it was Joe Mazzulla, in a way where he had to decide that on the fly, literally right before training camp broke for the Celtics that season. What, in your eyes, makes Joe Mazzulla the right head coach to lead the Celtics into this next saga of them as a franchise? Tatum, not around this season, could be leaning on Brown as a leader, but also navigated through what will be a whole new way to build teams in the NBA.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Joe handles it, because obviously he came in and they were ready to win a title right away. They didn't the first year, but came back the next year and finished the job. And this past year, obviously, their whole only goal was to go back to back. They didn't quite get there, obviously, but this will be the first time he's dealing with probably playing younger guys, playing guys who aren't really championship caliber players. How is he going to handle that? How is he going to handle it when they lose, 4 out of 5 games? Is he going to relax a little bit? Not really in his style. But here's the thing. The two things he's great at. One, teaching the game, teaching guys how to play together, teaching guys how to think the game and not just play it. And then two, I just think he's great at building a culture of hard work and building a culture of toughness. And that goes a long way, especially when you've got a few new faces in and you're going to be trying to, kind of keep alive the spirit that you've had when Jason Tatum was out there. It's going to be a different year for a lot of these guys, and Joe will have to navigate all that.
Yeah, I mean, still just a young head coach, still getting his legs under him in a way, and has a ring to go along with all that. He's Jay King of The Athletic. Catch him covering everything Celtics, the draft, this offseason, the trade deadline, all of that and more. Jay, appreciate you taking the time, my man.